So far, Sam has a bold cap on, and I used a vinyl one from Cryolin and blended the edges with alcohol or acetone, I think it was. So on his body now, he's wiping down some toner and some no sweat resistant product. He's specifically putting that under his armpits because he is going out clubbing with this Halloween makeup design, and obviously he's bound to sweat. Sam likes to take process pictures of his nails and before. So I'm going in with a latex body piece. This is what I made him. We actually used this the year before as a Games of Thrones Night Walker character. It's the kind of like mummified chest kind of piece. And Sam does like to reuse the products, obviously, because it does cost him a lot to have new products made, and I don't mind because I know Halloween can be expensive for my clients, and I don't mind to keep the prices down. Obviously, I have to give them some expectations that the edges may not be as good as what they originally was, and that's due to obviously some adhesive being still on it, and you can't always get it very clear back to normal. But we did look after the piece. There was hardly any tears. So I've glued it down using Pros-Aid on his chest and waited till it went clear and tacky, and also on the prosthetic. And that's when you push it together, it's like a contact adhesive. And when you press it together, it will firmly stick. And Sam says usually his prosthetics do stay in place. And this was about 5 in the afternoon, and he goes out clubbing till about 5 in the morning. So once the piece is stuck down and pressed into place, I'm now going around it with some Pro Bondo. This is not my own mix, this is a pre-bought mix, so this is the sort of thing I would buy and use for Pro Bondo transfers. And I just love it. It's already strong, it's already mixed as it is, it's brilliant. It is an expensive product, so I do add it on Sam's bill. And I go around the edges, building up the edges, because it is a latex piece. I can't blend the edges down. The edges aren't as thin as they was originally, so I do use a lot of this. I'll do this step all the way around and let it dry, and then I'll go in with another 2 or 3 layers if need be. Some areas need more than others. I love Pro Bondo for doing this for prosthetic pieces. I've seen people use it to build upon the face, like quite skeletal, and just designs like that where you can go in and make some scarring or like features. And yeah, it's good to build up. I do think it can dry quite slowly, so I don't really like to build it up directly on the face myself, but I do like to use it to blend edges or make the Pro Bondo transfers. So he's got a back piece on as well. It's kind of like a spinal effect, so that's going down the centre of his back, and that is also what I stuck down and reused from last year. And so as the front's drying, I go around that piece, and I repeat this process until I feel any prosthetics are stuck down and oh god. With something like this design, I try and get Sam done in 2 hours. Usually it goes to 2.5 to 3. And that is me working fast. Ideally, I'd love an assistant, but it's Halloween and usually everyone's booked up. It's not a professional makeup in the sense of it's not being filmed or photographed, or it's not for celebrities or anything like that. But it is for Sam to wear out on his nights out. And he usually wins competitions with the designs we do on Halloween. So this is a prosthetic piece I actually bought from Tara FX. She's another local Leicester artist. She's brilliant and won awards at IMATs and things like that. And she's used silicone for this piece. So I do use silicone sometimes, but I need to use it a lot more. I've ended up swaying more into latex and sticking with latex, but I do need to go back more into silicone pieces. So that prosthetic, I was just looking around his face, just seeing where it fits, seeing where it might need adjustments and where it would need adhesive. So using a brush and I believe I used Telesis for this. So I put Telesis on his face and Telesis on the piece itself. And then once to a sticky level. I kind of did it in one motion, but ideally you work from the nose and chin outwards. And I think that's what I am concentrating on there, and making sure those areas are stuck down before pressing it into other areas. You can actually powder the piece down and then re-accelerate the glue by spraying or adding a little bit of IPA. And I think that's what I'm doing. My brush may be loaded with IPA just to loosen up the glue a bit and just to get it more moving, so it fits in the right places. This prosthetic wasn't made for Sam, so it's never going to fit perfectly. It's not a custom made piece for him. It was on whoever Tara's base object was. It fit okay in some places and then not so good in others, but we can adjust it. Sam don't mind. It helped him have a makeup at a budget, because when I tell him the cost sometimes of how much things will cost to make custom and from scratch, obviously most people, when they hear that figure, will have a mini heart attack. It can be very expensive to make anything from scratch. So from working the nose and chin area outwards to the near the eyes, to the side of the face, and then I finish on the forehead. And I'm just making sure that the pieces are covered in glue and the skin. We want it to be stuck really well for the fact he's going to be clubbing in it all night. Once you've got most places stuck down, that's when you can really concentrate on the outer edges. It's definitely a slow process when you're doing such a big area. Sam is now just pressing it into place for me and making sure things feel stuck, and is letting me know if anywhere feels that it's not stuck. And while this is being put on the whole time, Pro Bondo is setting around the chest piece and the back piece. So it's giving me time to, let those set before I can go with second layers with that. And I will also go around the facial piece with the same thing, so some Pro Bondo. I believe when Tara gave me this one, she wasn't too happy with her piece. She says the edges weren't too great, and she wanted to rerun it, but due to it being Halloween, she was busy and I was busy, and we was fine to just go ahead with it. Sam's pretty laid back like that. I think as long as he ends up looking good, he doesn't mind if there's some faults in the pieces. But again, obviously, if he was doing filming and close-up work, or in bright lights and things like that, it would emphasise any tears and thick edges. So do be aware of the pieces you're using and what it's being used for. So these are some earpieces I got off Etsy, and they were mermaid gills, and it just really suited this design. So these are silicone again, and I stuck it down with, I believe, the Telesis, just for the speed, and I blended around the edges with IPA, and they were beautiful. I was having to be careful with the bowl cap, and in fact, I believe I did get the bowl cap that was that you needed acetone. Oh, sorry, I can't say it. With acetone to melt the edges, because I knew I was using these earpieces on, which I could melt down with the IPA. So when I was using the IPA around the silicone edges of these, it didn't affect the bowl cap underneath. So yeah, you got to be mindful of things like that and what you're layering up. These earpieces kind of covered his ears, but he could still slightly hear, and they just gave a really good ear feature to the look, because obviously he's changing into some kind of underworld demon. To have human ears would just take away from that element of what I was aiming for. So there I am, I'm going in with some Pro Bondo around the edges of the facial piece now. And then going in to apply the ear. Most of the time of the makeup is spent on getting the pieces down and adhered and making sure they're bonded. Sam always asks me to put extra layers of bonding to make sure they do stick really well. You also have to be cautious and have in mind what your client is aiming for. Whether it is just a photo shoot makeup, whether it is filming, or whether it is going out dancing, because it should affect your decisions and what you're applying and where. I think, I don't know if it was for this makeup or another one, but Sam was asking for something to be put on his neck, and I know that the necks can be quite hard to keep a prosthetic down, especially large pieces or like latex ones, something that's quite hard and rigid that doesn't move with the skin. Silicone smaller pieces would be best for that decision. But because you move your neck so much, pieces can lift off quite easily. So I would say consider anything like that when you are booking in your makeup design for your clients. So as you can see, again, I'm just going around the edges with a Pro Bondo, just layering up wherever that needs it. Some places might need more than others, but I do apply a lot to get it really concreted down. If I did have more time for the makeup, and I'm talking double the time that I did to apply this, I would want better pieces with nicer edges and um, better time to do the airbrushing and paint. But from what you see is a speeded up version of the application anyway. But for me, a 2.5 to 3 hours on this design wasn't enough, and I would have at least liked another hour and maybe an assistant. But in most circumstances, you're never going to get that much time. It's not cost effective, and it also is, a character or the model doesn't really want to be sat for that long in the makeup chair anyway. And ideally, if this was a silicone chest piece, the edges were probably always going to be better than the latex one anyway. So going forward, I would recommend silicone prosthetics rather than the latex for the fact that it moves with the chest. It is less likely to come unstuck, and the edges are way quicker to achieve than what it is with the latex and layering up Pro Bondo. But again, it's down to the customer's budget, and the customer pays my bills, so I have to do what suits them. I can work around it no matter what. I'm just going all over the head with some Prosade, with a kind of textured sponge, and that's to add layer to the bold cap and texture. It makes the paint stick better and adhere better. So now I'm going in with paint, and this is mist air paint, body paint, airbrush paint. You can use with brush and sponge, and this is a kabuki brush, so it's making the body paint application really fast. So with the body paint, I'm trying to get a two-tone kind of layered effect, like an ombre. It'll be going from a darker blue to a lighter blue to a white kind of silver shade. So these are kind of my base layers. It can look odd at first, especially when you see the colouring of the prosthetic so far. But I love this paint. It is long wearing. It isn't alcohol based, it's water based. So I always give Sam a little bit of a top up kit to reapply to his underarms and things like that that are bound to come off after a few hours. I have used alcohol paints before. I think Pro Air is one, for example. And as much as I love it and it's brilliant, it really clogs up the airbrush gun. I think some colours more than others, like whites and pale colours. But I found myself spending so much time trying to flush through my airbrush and changing my airbrush that it put me off using the product. But I would love to get a bit more professional and a bit more hands-on with the Pro Air, because in Sam's situation where he's out dancing all night, it's the kind of product he really needs. And in fact, I believe I did use Pro Air on him once, and it's still cracked and creased in those areas like the neck and underarm, so it almost put me off it a little bit more as well. So I thought not only it took long to apply, it also didn't stay like I thought it would. Cream products are also really good for longer wearing. You can set down with powder, but they can also crease due to sweat in those areas anyway, and they can also be a bit longer to apply. They're harder to use and they're harder to remove for the client. So if the client's got a job on the next day, or has to go work, or has commitments, they may not want something that's going to really stain them for long anyway. So again, it's just things to consider from not only the prosthetics but the paint you use as well. So kind of down the centre is where I was going for more the pale look and the whiter look and the silver look and the baby blue look, with the darker blue coming to the outer edges. So it can look quite funny. The process is you have to trust the process. You'll start to work and you'll think it's really not looking good or things are going wrong, but trust the process, use inspiration pictures, have a plan, and just go with it. And just try. Sometimes with makeup and art, sometimes you'll have an happy accident and something could go wrong, but it actually ends up being a better plan than what you planned. So definitely just trust the process, go with the flow, and if it's not looking right, it's because you're not finished. So I have a few kabuki brushes at hand, one for the lighter blue, one for the silvery white, and one for the darker blue, and I'm going in and out trying to get the blend. So I kind of buff it in circular motions, each colour meeting up to the lines of each other and then blending over. It can take a while to blend and get a nice nice even blend, but it's just practice and it's just patience. So going in with airbrush to bring some of the contours back into the chest and to try and blend the pieces together. And also go over some of the blue where it's looking too stark and too bright. Tried a few airbrush guns and compressors, but I can't remember the name of the one I've got, but it's like a gun rather than the one that you pull the lever down at the top with your index finger. It's more of a gun. So I prefer that one. I'll have to do a little video on that and get the links and things. But I can also have a few guns set up. It's the best thing to do. Was my main Halloween day, so I worked back to back from about 10 in the morning till about 9 at night. So the better at hand I have things to reach and grab, the better. So I do pre-prep about a week before, leading up to it, to make sure I'm stocked up, to make sure everything's where I need it to be, and make sure I've got all the colours I need. And then before each client, make sure I've got time in between to layer up any airbrushes and things like that. So I have a few airbrushes where I can have one for whites, one for blues, one for blacks, and so on. So I did cover Sam's trousers. I think we took a cape into it, and that must have come off at some point and we haven't noticed. But he's a really good client in the sense he don't mind the process. He just tells me to get on with it and we get it done, because he knows he asked for a 6-hour makeup in a 3-hour appointment. So he knows that we've just got to crack on, get it done, work as fast as possible. Ideally, if I had an assistant, they would be helping me map these colours down whilst I'd be going in with details with the airbrush. So I will run out of footage here. I didn't quite manage to get to record it all. Trying to have a camera set up. I had my camera and phone, I believe. Yeah, trying to get that set up and do that whilst doing the makeup as well on the busiest day of the year is, it was hard graft. So unfortunately, that's why the images is short and not perfect and things like that. But I am trying to record more and more things. Usually when work can go really good, or I've done something really good, I've never had a camera at hand to be able to record it and share about it. It's just typical. But I am trying to do more and more videos and footage and share the knowledge and any tips that I've learned along the way. There as well, I'm using a sponge, just going over any edges. That will help kind of blend the two together. I mean, this didn't have to be a perfect blend. I mean, I do love blending, and when it's done beautifully, it does show skill. But sometimes with like your character creatures and stuff, it's good to have texture anyway. You might notice I've not done the hands yet, and that's in case I'm needed to go toilet, have some food, have his phone. Hands is usually one of the last things we do. Again, it's also another thing that can come off quite quick. So I'm going to bring in some blue contouring into the chest piece now, trying to bring it into the other blue, just so that chest piece isn't so blatantly stuck on. This is where I like to accentuate any contours into the piece and into his actual skin tone and the rest of his body. And that way it can go over the edges and hopefully merge all into one rather than seeming like something's still stuck on. Usually the airbrush brings the details together. I prefer airbrush. A lot of people still prefer hands, or they prefer all airbrush. I do like to combine the two. But I do love airbrush sometimes, how it can just fastly bring on the details. If I was doing that by hand, I wouldn't have done it as quick as what I would have done it with the airbrush. So there, in between layers, I'm like doing layers of setting spray, Cryolin one. It's just a good way to help seal in any makeup. But do that once it's dry, obviously. So now going back to the face, some of the glue and stuff is dry. So I'm layering up any paint or any more. We had issues around the mouth, which can be quite a common thing with prosthetics anyway. But because, like I said, the prosthetic wasn't made for him, it's a large piece. Around the nose and the mouth was our main issue of where it didn't fit properly. So yeah, he did have issues around the mouth, and I had to give him a little top-up kit of some glue so he could keep reapplying that if need be. And then because he does talk a lot when we have it done, he probably should have actually sat a bit more still with it on. But it is Halloween and he's going out clubbing. I want it to be fun. I don't want to have to tell my client to sit there and be too quiet, especially when he's so quite chilled about it. He wants it done good, but he also, he wants to enjoy the process. He wants to have fun. So it wasn't necessarily lifting. The piece was just a little bit big for him, and probably if I had enough time more to prep it, I would have trimmed the area a little bit. I would have rather a larger edge around the mouth and it more stuck down with less saliva build up than how he applied it. So with every makeup you'll learn something going forward and how you can prep more or what you should have done more. I'm a biggest critique of my own work, and I'm always, I've got a list of 10 things that I wished I'd done better or different, or things that I'd learned. I do find with makeup, I'm not very complacent and I'm always learning. So this is the final look. You can see it's a lot more all together now. I went over the arms with more white veining and detail. I went in with some black shading in places. And then I went over with some veins as well. I had a 3D silicone like injection thing. I forgot the name. I'll put it in the description. But yeah, hope you like it.